The blizzard came down like God's own fury, turning the Montana Territory into a white hell. 22-year-old Ethan Cole pressed his shoulder against the cabin door, fighting the wind that threatened to tear it from his hands. Snow drove horizontal across the threshold, and through the whiteout, he could barely make out the silhouette stumbling toward him. She collapsed into his arms before he could speak. A woman wrapped in a beaded deerskin cloak, her long black braid crusted with ice. Ethan caught her weight, his inexperienced hands awkward as he dragged her inside and kicked the door shut. The cabin plunged into sudden quiet, broken only by her ragged breathing and the howl of wind against the log walls. Before we continue with Ethan and this mysterious woman's story, I want to ask you something important. If you're enjoying this tale from the Wild West, would you take a moment to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video? It truly means everything to us and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. Also, I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? At home? During your commute? Let me know in the comments. Now, back to our story. Ethan knelt beside her on the rough wooden floor, his heart hammering against his ribs. He'd been tending the line shack for 3 weeks alone, checking fence lines for the Triple Bar Ranch, and in all that time, he hadn't seen another soul. The woman's eyes fluttered open, dark as obsidian, filled with pain and something else. Fear. "Please," she whispered in English, touched with an accent. "Don't send me back." "Back where, ma'am?" Ethan's voice cracked slightly. He cleared his throat, trying to sound more confident than he felt. At 22, he'd spent more time with horses than people, more time reading books by lamplight than talking to women. "You're hurt." Blood seeped through her deerskin dress at the shoulder. She tried to sit up, winced, and fell back. "My husband, he'll find me. He always finds me." Ethan's hands shook as he reached for the medical supplies his foreman had left, not from the cold, but from the sudden weight of responsibility. He'd been born on a farm in Ohio, orphaned at 15, and had worked his way west, doing honest labor. He knew cattle and horses and hard work. He didn't know how to handle a bleeding woman who spoke of a husband with terror in her voice. "Can you tell me your name?" he asked, uncorking a bottle of whiskey with trembling fingers. "Ayana." She said it like a prayer. "It means eternal blossom in my mother's tongue, but he calls me his property." The wind shrieked around the cabin, rattling the shutters. Snow found every crack, dusting the floor with white powder. Ethan looked at the door. The latch was simple, meant to keep out animals, not people. If someone came looking, it wouldn't hold. "This is going to hurt," he said softly, moving closer with a clean cloth. "I need to see how bad that shoulder is." Ayana nodded, biting her lower lip as he carefully pulled back the deerskin. The wound was deep, a knife slash that had missed the bone but torn through muscle. Ethan's stomach lurched, but he forced himself steady. He'd stitched up horses, calves, even his own leg once after a barbed wire accident. This was the same. Had to be. "Go slow," she breathed, her fingers gripping his forearm. "It hurts." "I'll die before I hurt you," Ethan heard himself say, and meant it with a conviction that surprised him. He poured whiskey over the wound, and she gasped, her nails digging into his shirt. I know, just a little more." He worked by firelight, his large hands surprisingly gentle as he cleaned and stitched the wound. Ayana watched him through half-closed eyes, studying his face, the honest brown eyes, the sandy hair that fell across his forehead, the strong jaw that hadn't quite lost its boyish softness. He had the broad shoulders and thick muscles of a man who worked hard for his living, but there was a gentleness in his touch that spoke of someone who'd never learned cruelty. "You're not like other white men," she said, when he'd finished bandaging her shoulder. Ethan sat back on his heels, wiping his hands on his pants. "I'm not like most men, period. Never have been much good at talking to people, especially women." He felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I mean, I can talk to horses just fine. They don't expect much." Despite her pain, Ayana's lips curved into the ghost of a smile. "Horses are honest. Better than most people." The wind hammered at the door, and snow piled against the window. Ethan moved to check the latch, then dragged his bedroll to wedge against the base of the door. The cabin was 12 feet by 12 feet. One room with a stone fireplace, a narrow bed, a table, and 2 chairs. Supplies lined crude shelves: coffee, beans, flour, salt pork. Not much, but enough to weather a storm. "The blizzard's getting worse," he said, feeding more wood to the fire. "Even if someone wanted to track you, they couldn't. Not in this. Nako can track anything." Ayana pulled the bearskin blanket tighter around herself. "He tracked a wounded elk for 3 days across Bear Rock. He'll come." "Your husband?" "My owner." The bitterness in her voice was sharp as broken glass. "My father sold me to him when I was 16. He said it would bring peace between our peoples. It only brought me pain." Ethan lowered himself into the other chair, studying her in the firelight. She was beautiful. There was no denying that, with high cheekbones and full lips and eyes that held both sorrow and strength. But it was the purple bruise on her jaw, partially hidden by her braid, that made his hands curl into fists. "No man has the right," he said quietly. "Rights?" Ayana laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I have no rights. I'm Apache on my mother's side, Mexican on my father's. In Nako's eyes, I'm his to do with as he pleases. In the white man's eyes, I'm barely human. What rights do I have?" "You're not property," Ethan said, leaning forward. "You're a person. That's enough." They sat in silence, listening to the storm. Ethan made coffee, strong and bitter, and they shared it from chipped tin cups. Ayana told him her story, in pieces, between sips and silences. How Nako was a respected warrior among the Chiricahua. How he'd wanted a wife to prove his status. How her father had been desperate to secure protection for their small band of mixed-blood families living on the edges of both worlds. "The first year, I thought I could make him love me," she said, staring into her cup. "I cooked his favorite foods. I kept our teepee immaculate. I learned to tan hides and make pemmican, and sew moccasins with perfect stitches. But love isn't something you can earn through service." "What is it then?" Ethan asked, genuinely curious. He'd never been in love, never even been with a woman. The ranch hands teased him about it sometimes, called him preacher, because he didn't join them on their trips to the saloon girls in Bozeman. Ayana looked at him, really looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. "I think love is seeing someone, not what they can give you or do for you, just seeing them, all of them, and choosing them anyway." The fire crackled. Outside, the blizzard raged. "I see a woman worth saving," Ethan said softly. Ayana's eyes glistened. "You don't know me. I know you ran through a blizzard to escape. I know you're brave enough to take that chance. That's enough for me to know you're worth helping." She set down her cup and stood, swaying slightly. Ethan rose too, reaching out to steady her. His hands found her waist, and for a moment they stood close enough that he could feel the warmth of her breath, see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. "The bed," Ayana said. I need to lie down. Of course, you take it. I'll make do on the floor. It's cold. I slept in worse. But she didn't move toward the bed. Instead, she looked up at him, her hand rising to touch his chest. Ethan, that's your name, isn't it? I heard you say it to your horse when you thought you were alone. You saw me before the storm. I've been watching the cabin for 2 days, trying to decide if you were safe. Her hand pressed flat against his heartbeat. You talked to your horse like a friend. You fixed a bird's nest that fell in the wind. You're kind. I haven't known kindness in a long time. Ethan's throat was tight. I'm not special. You are to me. The words hung between them, charged with something Ethan didn't have a name for. He'd read about romance in dime novels, about dashing heroes and swooning heroines, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of a beautiful woman looking at him like he mattered, like he was someone worth seeing. We should rest, he managed. Morning will come soon enough. But sleep didn't come easy. Ethan lay on the floor, wrapped in a wool blanket, listening to Ayana's breathing from the bed. The fire burned low, casting dancing shadows on the walls. He thought about her words, about being seen, about what it meant to choose someone. Around midnight, he heard her gasp. Ayana? He was on his feet instantly. Fever, she whispered. The wound, it's burning. Ethan lit a candle and moved to the bedside. Even in the dim light, he could see the flush on her cheeks, the sweat beading on her forehead. He touched her face. She was burning up. The whiskey must not have been enough, he muttered, his mind racing. He'd seen infection before, knew it could kill fast if left untreated. I need to clean it again, draw out the poison. Do what you must, Ayana said through chattering teeth. Ethan worked through the night, changing poultices, spooning broth between her lips when she was lucid enough to swallow, pressing cool cloths to her forehead when the fever spiked. He talked to her constantly, about his childhood in Ohio, about the books he'd read, about his dreams of someday owning a small spread of his own. Just a few acres, he said, wringing out another cloth. Maybe a creek running through it, some good grass for cattle, a house with real windows and a porch. Nothing fancy. Sounds beautiful, Ayana murmured. You think so? Anywhere is beautiful when you're free. The fever broke just before dawn. Ayana's eyes cleared, and she managed a weak smile. You stayed with me. Where else would I go? Ethan smiled back, feeling the exhaustion in his bones. How do you feel? Like I've been trampled by horses, but alive. She reached for his hand. Thank you. Her fingers were cool now, no longer burning. Ethan held them gently, aware of how small her hand felt in his calloused palm. You're not out of danger yet. When the storm clears, Nako will come. Ayana's voice was steady. He won't let me go. Not because he loves me, but because I'm his. Like his rifle or his horse. Then we'll face him together, Ethan said. You don't know what you're saying. He's a warrior. He's killed men. I'm not afraid of dying. Ethan surprised himself with the truth in his words. I'm afraid of not standing up when it matters. My whole life, I've been quiet. I've kept my head down, done my work, never caused trouble. But if I let you go back to someone who hurts you, what does that make me? Ayana sat up slowly, ignoring the pull of her stitches. It makes you smart. It makes you someone who'll live to see tomorrow. I don't want to just see tomorrow. I want to do something with it. Ethan stood, pacing the small cabin. My whole life, I've been alone. Not lonely, exactly, just alone. I thought that was enough, but now, he turned to face her. Now I know what it feels like to care about someone, and I'm not going to waste that. You barely know me. I know enough. The storm raged for 3 more days. In that time, Ethan and Ayanna existed in their own world. A world measured by the crackle of the fire, the taste of coffee, the rhythm of shared meals and long conversations. Ayanna taught him words in Apache. Shash for bear, Goju for dawn, Chil for plant. Ethan taught her about books, reading to her from a worn copy of Shakespeare's sonnets he kept in his saddlebag. "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" he read, his voice awkward with the formal words. "Thou art more lovely and more temperate." This Shakespeare, Ayanna said, he understood longing. "I'm starting to understand it myself," Ethan admitted. On the 3rd night, Ayanna asked him why he'd never been with a woman. They were sitting close to the fire, sharing the warmth, and the question came out of comfortable silence. Ethan flushed. "I don't know. Never felt right, I guess. The ranch hands, they'd go into town and, well, but those women, they weren't there because they wanted to be. They were there because they needed money or had no other choice. Seemed wrong to take something from someone who was only giving it because they were desperate. Most men don't think that way. Maybe that's the problem." He looked at her. If I'm ever with someone, I want it to mean something. I want it to be because we both chose it, because we both want it. Not because one of us has no other option." Ayanna's hand found his in the darkness. "And if someone wanted you, really wanted you," Ethan's heart was a drum in his chest. "I'd want to be worthy of that." "You already are." When she kissed him, it was gentle, a question more than a demand. Ethan froze for a heartbeat, then responded with all the pent-up longing he'd never known he carried. His hands came up to cup her face, careful of her healing shoulder, mindful of every place she might hurt. "Tell me if," he started. "You won't hurt me," Ayanna said. "Not you." They moved to the bed, and Ethan discovered that all his nervousness, all his awkwardness, melted away when faced with the simple truth of wanting to make her happy. He was gentle, attentive, asking permission with every touch. And when they finally came together, it felt less like losing something and more like finding a piece of himself he hadn't known was missing. Afterward, they lay tangled together under the bearskin, listening to the wind finally start to ease. "The storm's breaking," Ayanna whispered. "I know. He'll come tomorrow, maybe the day after." "I know that too." Ethan pulled her closer. "But we'll face it together. You're not alone anymore. Neither are you." The storm broke on the 4th day, leaving the world buried in snow. Ethan stood on the cabin's small porch, scanning the white landscape. The sun was brilliant, almost blinding, reflecting off the pristine surface. Inside, Ayanna was preparing. She'd insisted on cleaning and checking the cabin's rifle, her movements efficient and practiced. "If Nako comes, when he comes, he won't expect resistance. He'll think I'll just submit." "Will you tell me what happened? Why you finally ran?" Ayanna's hands stilled on the rifle. "He hit me, and I hit him back. First time I ever did. I saw something in his eyes change. Not anger, exactly. Respect, maybe, or fear. I realized that if I stayed, one of us would eventually kill the other, so I ran." "How far is his camp?" 2 days' ride, but he's a good tracker. He'll be here by nightfall. If he started as soon as the snow let up." Ethan nodded, moving to check the ammunition. He'd grown up hunting, was a decent shot with a rifle, but he'd never shot at a person before. Never wanted to. They spent the day preparing. Ethan reinforced the door, stacked supplies where they could reach them easily. Ayana made bullets, her hands steady and sure. They didn't talk much, but every time their eyes met, understanding passed between them. The sun was low on the horizon when Ayana stiffened. He's here. Ethan couldn't hear anything, but he trusted her instincts. He moved to the window, peering through a crack in the shutters. A man emerged from the tree line. Tall, powerful, moving across the snow with the confidence of someone who'd never known defeat. He wore buckskin and fur, his long black hair loose around his shoulders. Even from a distance, Ethan could see the predatory grace in his movements. "Ayana!" The voice was a crack of thunder. "Come out!" She stood frozen, all the color draining from her face. Ethan moved to her side. "You don't have to face him. If I don't, he'll burn us out. Or wait until we have to leave for supplies." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "I know him." "Then we face him together." They stepped out onto the porch, and Nako stopped 10 feet away. He was even more imposing up close, broad-shouldered, with scars that spoke of countless battles. His eyes were hard as flint, and they burned with fury as they took in Ayana, standing close to Ethan. "You dare?" Nako's English was perfect, his voice cold. "You dishonor yourself with this white boy?" "I dishonor myself by staying with a man who sees me as property," Ayana shot back. Nako's gaze shifted to Ethan. "You, boy, give her to me, and you can live." "No." The word came out stronger than Ethan felt. His rifle was in his hands, but he kept it lowered, a statement of readiness, not aggression. Nako laughed. "You think you can stop me? You're a child playing at being a man." "Maybe," Ethan said, "but I'm a child who knows right from wrong, and keeping a woman against her will is wrong. She is my wife. She's a person." Ethan's voice rose. "And she doesn't want you." Something flickered in Nako's eyes. Pain, maybe, or wounded pride. "I gave her father horses. Good horses. 20 of them. I paid for her." "You can't buy a person's heart," Ethan said quietly. "You can only earn it. And you lost hers the first time you raised your hand to her. What do you know of marriage, of duty?" Nako took a step forward. "She belongs with her people." "Her people sold her," Ayana said, her voice cutting. "You want to know why I ran, Nako? Because I finally realized I'd rather die free than live as your possession. Because I finally found someone who sees me as a person, not a prize." "Him?" Nako's lip curled. "This soft white boy who probably can't even—" "Don't." Ayana's hand was steady on her own rifle now. "Don't speak of him like that. He's more of a man than you'll ever be." The words struck like a physical blow. Nako's hand moved to his knife, and Ethan raised his rifle. "I don't want to shoot you," Ethan said, "but I will if you force me to." "You won't," Nako smiled coldly. "You don't have the stomach for killing." "Maybe not." Ethan's voice was steady. "But I have the stomach for protecting someone I care about. There's a difference." They stood in tense silence, 3 people on a precipice. The setting sun painted the snow gold and red, and the world held its breath. "I could challenge you," Nako said finally, "one warrior to another. Knives. No guns. If I win, she comes with me. If you win," he spread his hands, "she's yours." "No," Ayana stepped forward. "You don't get to decide my fate in combat like I'm a horse to be won. I've made my choice. I'm staying with Ethan. Not because he beat you in a fight, but because he's shown me what it means to be valued, to be loved." "Love?" Nako spat the word. "What does he know of love?" He knows it's not about owning, Ayana said softly. He knows it's about seeing someone for who they are and choosing them anyway. He knows it means listening when I say no, respecting when I say stop. You never learn those things, Nako. And that's why I could never love you. The Apache warrior stood silent, his face a mask. Then, slowly, he lowered his hand from his knife. I tracked you across 3 territories, he said, his voice suddenly weary. I thought if I found you, if I brought you back, maybe things could be different. Maybe I could make you want to stay. He looked at Ethan. But I see how you look at him. You never looked at me like that. I tried, Ayana said, and there was genuine sorrow in her voice. For 3 years I tried. But you can't force love, Nako. It grows or it doesn't. And with him it grows? Yes, Nako was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his pouch and pulled out a beaded bracelet. Intricate work, beautiful. Ayana's breath caught. Your mother's? She whispered. You admired it once. Long ago, when we were first married. Before. He held it out. Take it, not as a gift from a husband to a wife, as a gift from one person to another, to remember that once, briefly, we tried. Ayana took the bracelet with shaking hands. Thank you. Nako looked at Ethan. You, boy. She will need protection in the white man's world. They will look at her and see only her brown skin. They will speak to her as if she's less than human. Will you stand with her through that? Every day, Ethan said without hesitation. For as long as she'll have me. Then you are less of a boy than I thought. Nako turned to go, then paused. There is a preacher in Bozeman, Father Miguel. He does not care about the color of a person's skin. He will marry you if you ask. And then he was gone, vanishing into the growing darkness like a shadow released. Ethan and Ayana stood on the porch, watching until even the tracks in the snow became indistinct. Ethan's hand found hers, and she squeezed tight. Are you all right? He asked. I don't know. I thought I'd feel relieved. Instead, I just feel sad. He loved you, in his way. Not the right way. She turned to face him. Not like you do. How do I love you? Like I'm whole. Like I'm enough. Like I'm the best part of your day, not a burden to be managed. She smiled through tears. Like I'm human. Ethan pulled her close, mindful of her shoulder. You are the best part of my day. Every day. Even the days when you're ornery or sad, or when we argue about how to make coffee. We don't argue about coffee. We will eventually, he grinned. I have strong opinions about coffee. So do I. See? We're going to fight like cats and dogs, and I'm going to love every minute of it, Ayana said, pulling him down for a kiss. The journey to Bozeman took 4 days. They rode double on Ethan's horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Copper, who took their combined weight without complaint. The world was a wonderland of white. The snow so deep in places that they had to dismount and lead Copper through drifts that came up to Ethan's thighs. At night, they made camp in sheltered spots, under overhanging rocks, in dense stands of pine where the snow couldn't reach. Ethan taught Ayana how to start a fire with damp wood, how to bank coals so they'd last until morning. She showed him how to read tracks in the snow, how to find the trails deer used, how to tell if a stream was safe to drink from by the plants growing near its banks. You know so much, Ethan said one evening, as they huddled close to their fire, sharing a blanket. About surviving out here, I mean. My mother taught me. Ayana's voice was soft with memory. She said a woman who could survive alone was a woman no one could control. She wanted me to be free, even if she couldn't be. What happened to her? Cholera, when I was 14. After she died, my father didn't know what to do with me. I think he was afraid I'd become like her, too independent, too willing to speak my mind. So he married me off to the first man who would take me. Ethan was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm sorry you lost her, but I'm grateful she taught you how to survive. Otherwise, you might not have made it through that blizzard to the cabin. Everything happens for a reason," my mother used to say. Even the painful things. Ayana leaned her head on his shoulder. I used to think that was just something people said to make themselves feel better. But maybe she was right. Maybe I had to go through all of that to get here, to you. Do you really think we were meant to find each other? I think we were meant to save each other, Ayana said. You saved me from Nako, but I think maybe I saved you too, from being alone, from thinking you didn't deserve to be loved. Ethan kissed the top of her head. You did save me. I just didn't know I needed saving until you showed up. On the third day, they saw smoke in the distance. Not the thin smoke of a campfire, but thick black columns that spoke of destruction. Ethan urged Copper forward, and they crested a rise to see a homestead burning in the valley below. Raiders, Ayana said, her voice tight. They could see bodies in the snow, a man, a woman, sprawled in unnatural positions. Ethan's stomach turned, but he forced himself to look closer. Movement caught his eye. Something small, huddled behind an overturned wagon. There's someone alive, he said, already sliding off Copper. Ethan, wait! It could be a trap! But he was already running, his long legs carrying him through the snow in great bounding strides. The figure behind the wagon was a child, a girl maybe 7 or 8, her face streaked with soot and tears. She had a knife in her hand, held out in front of her with trembling fingers. Stay back, she screamed. I'll cut you! Ethan stopped 10 feet away, raising his hands. I'm not going to hurt you, I promise. My name is Ethan. That's Ayana. He gestured to where Ayana had dismounted and was approaching slowly. We want to help. Everyone's dead, the girl's voice broke. The men came and they shot Papa and Mama, and they took Samuel. They took my brother. Which way did they go? Ayana asked, kneeling in the snow. The girl pointed west. Maybe an hour ago. There were 5 of them. They had masks. Ethan looked at Ayana. Her face was grim, but determined. We have to go after them, she said. We have 1 horse, 1 rifle, against 5 armed men. I know. Ayana stood, checking the ammunition in the rifle they'd brought from the cabin. But that's someone's child they took. We can't just leave him. The girl dropped her knife and ran to them, grabbing Ayana's hand. Please, please save Samuel. He's only 5. He'll be so scared. Ethan felt something shift in his chest, a hardening of resolve. He'd spent his whole life avoiding conflict, staying out of trouble. But there were some things you couldn't walk away from. Some lines you couldn't let people cross. We'll get him back, he said, and meant it. They left the girl with Copper and strict instructions to ride to the nearest ranch if they weren't back by nightfall. Then they set off on foot, following the raiders' trail through the snow. It wasn't hard to track. 5 horses and a struggling child left clear marks. They're not trying to hide their trail, Ayana observed. That means they're confident, arrogant. Or they think no one's coming after them. They're about to find out different. The trail led through a narrow canyon, the walls rising steep and rocky on either side. Ethan felt exposed, vulnerable. If the raiders were watching, this would be the perfect place for an ambush. But they made it through unmolested, and the trail opened into a small box canyon. Smoke rose from a campfire, and Ethan could hear voices, rough laughter, the sound of a child crying. They crept closer, using rocks and scrub brush for cover. 5 men sat around the fire, passing a bottle between them. The boy was tied to a tree, his face red and blotchy from crying. "What do we do?" Ethan whispered. Ayanna was studying the camp with narrowed eyes. "The one on the left is drunk. See how he's swaying? The 2 on the right are the leaders, better dressed, better weapons. The other 2 are followers. They'll run if the leaders fall. You want to shoot them?" "I want to save that child." Ayanna looked at him. "Can you do this? Can you take a life if you have to?" Ethan thought about the girl they'd left behind, about her parents lying dead in the snow. He thought about Samuel tied to that tree, terrified and alone. He thought about all the times he'd walked away from conflict, told himself it wasn't his business. "Yes," he said, "I can do this." Ayanna nodded. "I'll take the one on the right. You take the one on the left. Fire on my signal." They positioned themselves on opposite sides of the camp, rifles ready. Ethan's hands were steady now, his breathing calm. He sighted down the barrel at the man Ayanna had indicated, not at his head or his heart, but at his shoulder. A disabling shot, not a killing one, if he could. Ayanna raised her hand, dropped it. 2 shots rang out simultaneously, echoing off the canyon walls. Both targets went down. The drunk man fell forward into the fire, screaming. The other man clutched his shoulder, his face white with shock. Chaos erupted. The 3 remaining men dove for cover, grabbing for their weapons. But Ayanna was already moving, running low and fast toward the boy. Ethan provided covering fire, working the rifle's lever action, forcing the raiders to keep their heads down. Ayanna reached Samuel and cut his bonds with one slash of her knife. "Run!" she shouted, pushing him toward the canyon entrance. One of the raiders stood up, bringing his rifle to bear on the running child. Ethan didn't think, he just reacted. His shot took the man in the leg, and he went down hard. The 2 remaining raiders broke and ran, scrambling for their horses. Ethan let them go. They'd come for a defenseless homestead, not for armed resistance. Without their leaders, they were nothing. Ayanna gathered Samuel into her arms, and the boy clung to her, sobbing. Ethan moved through the camp, checking the fallen men. The drunk one was dead, smoke inhalation probably, from falling in the fire. The man Ethan had shot in the shoulder was unconscious but alive. The one Ayanna had hit was dead, her shot more accurate than Ethan's. "We need to go," Ayanna said, "before those other 2 come back with reinforcements." They made it back to where they'd left the girl by mid-afternoon. Her face lit up when she saw Samuel, and she ran to him, wrapping him in a fierce hug. "You came back," she whispered. "You really came back." "We said we would," Ethan replied simply. They buried the children's parents in the frozen ground. Hard work with frozen soil, but necessary work. Ethan said words over the graves, stumbling through half-remembered prayers from his childhood. The children stood hand in hand, silent and solemn. "What happens to them now?" Ethan asked Ayanna as they rode toward Bozeman, the 2 children sharing Copper's saddle in front of them. "I don't know. Orphanage, maybe. Or they'll be split up, sent to different families." "That's not right. They should stay together." "Life isn't always right, Ethan." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What if we took them?" Ayanna twisted to look at him. "What?" "What if we took them? You and me. We're getting married anyway. We're going to have a place of our own. Why not a family too?" "Ethan, we barely have enough for ourselves. We'll make it work. We have to." He looked at the children, at their small bodies pressed together for warmth and comfort. I was orphaned at 15. I know what it's like to be alone, to feel like no one wants you. I won't do that to them. Ayanna studied his face for a long moment, then smiled. You're a good man, Ethan Cole. Better than you know. Is that a yes? That's a yes. Father Miguel married them in a small adobe church on the outskirts of Bozeman. The priest was an older man with kind eyes and hands gnarled from arthritis. He asked no questions about the color of Ayanna's skin or the propriety of their hasty marriage. He simply blessed them and pronounced them husband and wife. The children stood as witnesses. Mary, they'd learned, and Samuel. Orphans now, but not for long. After the ceremony, Father Miguel took them aside. I know a rancher, he said. Good man. His name is Thomas Blackwell, owns the Triple Bar Ranch. He's always looking for hands, willing to work hard. I could send word. The Triple Bar? Ethan's eyes widened. That's where I was working when I met Ayanna. Then you already have a reference. Father Miguel smiled. Go see him. Tell him I sent you, and take these. He pressed a folded piece of paper into Ethan's hands. Adoption papers. I took the liberty of drawing them up. Sign them, and the children are legally yours. Ethan looked at the papers, then at the priest. Why are you helping us? Because I see in you what I see in few people. The willingness to do what's right, even when it's hard, even when it costs you something. Father Miguel placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. The world needs more people like you and your wife. Go, build something good. Thomas Blackwell was a bear of a man, 6'4", with a gray beard and eyes that missed nothing. He sat behind his desk in the ranch house, studying Ethan and Ayanna over steepled fingers. Buck speaks well of you, he said finally. Says you're the hardest worker he's ever seen. Never complains, never shirks. That true? I do my job, sir, Ethan said. And you? Blackwell turned to Ayanna. What can you do? Ayanna met his gaze without flinching. I can ride, shoot, track, hunt, and tan hides. I can cook for a crew of 20 and make your beef stretch twice as far as it should. I can birth cattle, set bones, and treat fever. I can read and write in 3 languages. What do you need done? Blackwell's eyebrows rose. Then he laughed. A deep, booming sound. I like you. You've got spine. He stood, extending his hand. I'll make you a deal. 20 acres of land. That rocky section by Willow Creek that nobody wants because the soil's poor. You make it work. You can buy it from me at cost. Fair? More than fair, Ethan said, shaking the offered hand. One more thing. Blackwell pulled open a drawer and extracted a leather pouch. 6 months' wages. Advance. You'll work it off, but you need capital to start. Buy tools, seed, maybe a milk cow or 2. Ethan stared at the pouch. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll make me proud. Say you'll build something that lasts. Blackwell's expression softened. I was an orphan too, son. Someone gave me a chance once. I'm just passing it on. The land by Willow Creek was everything Blackwell had said. Rocky, covered in sagebrush, with soil that looked more like gravel than earth. But it had water, and it had potential. Ethan stood on a small rise, Ayanna at his side, the children playing near the creek. It's perfect, Ayanna said. It's a mess, Ethan countered. It's going to take years to make this productive. Good thing we have years. She slipped her hand into his. Good thing we have each other. They built a one-room cabin first, rough-hewn logs, chinked with mud and grass, a sod roof, a stone fireplace. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. At night, they lay on their bedrolls, Mary and Samuel on one side of the room, Ethan and Ayanna on the other, and planned their future. "We'll need chickens," Ayanna said, "and a garden. I can grow squash, beans, corn, traditional crops. I'll clear the rocks from the south field. Start small, maybe hay the first year. Build up. The children will need schooling. We'll teach them. You know 3 languages, I can do figures. That's more than most folks have." "Do you ever regret it?" Ayanna asked quietly. "Taking on so much? A wife, 2 children, a piece of impossible land?" Ethan rolled onto his side, looking at her in the dim light from the dying fire. "Not for 1 second. Do you?" The virgin ranch hand was locked in a cabin with an Apache warrior's bride, Ayanna said softly. "That night changed his heart, but it changed mine too. I thought my life was over. Instead, it was just beginning." Ethan kissed her, soft and gentle. "Our life," he corrected, "it's just beginning." The first year was brutal. They worked from before dawn until after dark, clearing rocks, breaking ground, planting, harvesting. Ethan hired himself out to neighboring ranches during slow times, bringing in extra money. Ayanna took in sewing, made moccasins and beaded goods to sell in town. Mary proved to have a head for numbers, managing their accounts with a precision that amazed Ethan. Samuel learned to tend the chickens and milk their 2 cows without complaint. They were becoming a family, not born, but built, stone by stone, moment by moment. The town of Bozeman was less welcoming. Ethan heard the whispers when he walked the streets with Ayanna, saw the way women pulled their children close, the way men's eyes lingered with a mixture of contempt and something uglier. One afternoon, as Ayanna was browsing in the general store, the proprietor's wife approached Ethan. "You're that Cole boy, aren't you?" she sniffed. "The one who married the squaw." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. "I married my wife. Her name is Ayanna. It's shameful is what it is, mixing blood like that, against God's plan." "Ma'am, I don't recall asking for your opinion." Ethan's voice was cold. "And if this is how you talk about paying customers, we'll take our business elsewhere." He took Ayanna's arm and walked out, leaving the woman sputtering behind them. "You didn't have to do that," Ayanna said quietly as they loaded supplies into their wagon. "Yes, I did." Ethan's hands were shaking with suppressed anger. "I won't let anyone talk about you that way. I don't care who they are. It's going to be like this everywhere we go. Then we'll find places where it's not, and we'll ignore the rest." He cupped her face in his hands. "I love you. That's all that matters." But ignorance and hatred weren't so easily ignored. One evening, Ethan came home from checking fence lines to find Ayanna sitting on the porch steps, a bruise darkening her cheek. What happened? He was on his knees in front of her instantly, his hands gentle as he examined the injury. "Some men from town, 3 of them. They were waiting by the creek." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "They said things, ugly things. One of them grabbed me." "Did they?" Ethan couldn't finish the sentence. "No. Mary hit one with a shovel. Samuel bit another. They ran off when they heard you coming." She managed a weak smile. "Our children are fierce." "Did you recognize them?" "Yes." "Then we're going to the sheriff." But the sheriff was no help. He listened to Ayanna's story with barely concealed skepticism, his eyes lingering on her bruised face with something closer to amusement than concern. "You sure you didn't provoke them, Mrs. Cole?" he asked. Ethan slammed his hand on the desk. "Are you suggesting my wife deserved to be attacked?" I'm suggesting that when you marry outside your race, you invite trouble. Can't expect good Christian folk to just accept that. Good Christian folk, Ethan repeated slowly, don't assault women. Are you going to do your job, or do I need to take this to the territorial governor? The sheriff's eyes narrowed. You threatening me, boy? I'm promising you. If those men come near my family again, I'll handle it myself. And then you'll have a real crime to investigate. They left the sheriff's office with nothing. No justice, no promise of protection. But word got around. Ethan Cole, the quiet ranch hand who'd never caused trouble, had drawn a line in the sand. And people in Bozeman started to realize he meant it. Thomas Blackwell heard about the incident and rode out to their place the next day. He sat on the porch with Ethan, drinking coffee, not saying much. Finally, he stood. Those men who bothered your wife, he said. Their names are Garrett, Mills, and Tucker. They work for the competing ranch, the Rocking M. I'm going to have a word with their boss. Mr. Blackwell, you don't have to. Yes, I do. The older man's face was granite. You work for me. That makes you mine to protect. And nobody messes with what's mine. A week later, all three men left town, run off by their employer who wanted no trouble with Thomas Blackwell. The message was clear. The Coles had powerful friends. But more importantly, they had each other. By the end of the second year, they'd cleared 5 acres and had their first successful hay harvest. By the end of the third, they'd bought 3 milk cows and a small herd of cattle. 10 head, but it was a start. Mary was reading at a level beyond her years, and Samuel could rope a calf as well as any ranch hand. Ethan stood in their expanded cabin, now 3 rooms with real wooden floors and glass windows, and marveled at how much had changed. The awkward virgin ranch hand, who'd opened his door to a desperate woman in a blizzard, felt like a different person. Ayanna found him standing at the window, looking out over their land. She moved to his side, her hand resting on her swollen belly. They'd been trying for a year, and finally, success. What are you thinking about? She asked. About that night, the blizzard. How close I came to not answering the door. He turned to her. I almost didn't, you know? I was scared. I'd never dealt with anything like that before. What changed your mind? I heard you fall, heard you cry out, and I thought, what kind of man hears someone in need and doesn't help? What kind of man am I trying to be? A good one, Ayanna said. The best one. I don't know about that, but I'm trying. He placed his hand over hers on her belly, feeling the flutter of life beneath. Every day, I'm trying. The baby came in early spring, a girl with Ayanna's dark eyes and Ethan's sandy hair. They named her Hope, because that's what she represented. Hope for the future. Hope that love could overcome hatred. Hope that family was something you built, not something you were born into. Mary and Samuel doted on their baby sister, fighting over who got to hold her, who got to help with feeding and changing. The cabin rang with laughter and arguments and all the chaos of a real, living family. One evening, as Ethan was carrying water from the creek, he saw a figure on horseback, silhouetted against the setting sun. His hand went to the rifle he kept near the door, but Ayanna's hand on his arm stopped him. It's all right, she said. I know who it is. Nako rode into their yard, older now, lines of care etched into his face. He dismounted slowly, as if his body pained him. His eyes took in the cabin, the garden, the children playing near the porch, the baby in Ayanna's arms. You built something good, he said. We did, Ayana agreed. An awkward silence fell. Then Nako said, I came to tell you. I'm leaving the territory, going south, to join with my mother's people in Arizona. There's talk of a reservation, a place where we can live without always looking over our shoulders. That sounds good, Ayana said. Peaceful. Yes, peaceful. Nako looked at Ethan. I was wrong about you. You're not a boy. You're a man who knows what matters, and you've given her what I never could. Freedom. Not just from me, but freedom to be herself. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Nako reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small pouch. For the baby. It was my grandmother's. Silver beads. Apache tradition says they bring protection and good dreams. Ayana accepted the gift with tears in her eyes. Thank you. No, thank you. Nako mounted his horse. For showing me that sometimes loving someone means letting them go. I learned that too late with you. But maybe I can do better next time. They watched him ride away, disappearing into the golden evening light. Ayana turned to Ethan, the baby in her arms, the children at her feet, their land spread out before them. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't opened that door? She asked. Ethan pulled her close, careful of hope, kissing Ayana's forehead. Every day I thank God I was brave enough to answer it. You saved my life that night. No, Ethan said. You saved mine. You showed me what I was capable of, what I could become. Before you, I was just existing. Now I'm living. We're living, Ayana corrected. Together. Together, Ethan echoed, and in that single word was everything. Promise and hope and love and choice. Years later, when their children asked about how they fell in love, Ethan would tell them about the blizzard and the cabin. Ayana would add the parts he left out, about his gentleness, his courage, the way he'd seen her as a person when everyone else saw only property or problems. Your father, she would say, was the bravest man I ever met. Not because he could fight, though he could when it mattered, but because he chose kindness when the world told him to be hard. Your mother, Ethan would add, taught me what it means to be strong. Real strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. And then they would look at each other across the dinner table, across the years, across the life they'd built together, and smile, because they knew what the children would understand someday, that love isn't found in grand gestures or perfect moments. It's found in the quiet choice to see someone, really see them, and choose them anyway, every single day, together. The virgin ranch hand had been locked in a cabin with an Apache warrior's bride, and that night had changed his heart. But more than that, it had changed both their lives. From desperation and violence and fear had grown something beautiful. A family, a home, a love that would endure through hardship and hatred and time itself. Because they had chosen each other, and they kept choosing each other over and over every day. That was the real miracle, not the escape, not the confrontation, not even the happy ending. The miracle was in the choosing. The daily, unglamorous, beautiful work of building a life together, of seeing each other truly, flaws and fears and all, and saying yes, today, tomorrow, always, together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Ethan and Ayana's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.